episode of Lipstick and Lore. Roll the intro. Today I'm going to be your host in the spooky, strange, unsolved, conspiratorial, and historical cases that plague my mind and now have to plague yours. Today's case is that of the Panama 2. And these are two students who were visiting Panama and got lost in the wilderness under some very odd circumstances, and their belongings were found in very odd circumstances. And overall, this case is one that I've heard about a lot, not a lot, but a good amount, and that really just mind boggles me, and I thought I should talk about it because it's my channel and I can do what I want. And without further ado, on to the video. And handing it back over to non-voiceover me. So, today's case is a missing persons case, and it's technically not a murder case, technically, but it's never been solved, and it's one that I find incredibly interesting. Yeah, I don't know, I don't want to say it's been overplayed, but it definitely has been. It's a popular-ish one, I would say, but it's still one that is, plaguing my mind, so I figured I would come and talk about it. And that is the case of the Panama 2, which, if you don't know, the Panama 2 is two Dutch female students who go missing in, you guessed it, Panama. And there's some mysterious circumstances going on. There is definitely some weird happenings, some interesting camera angles, some interesting photos found on the camera, including one that seemingly just can't be recovered, even by FBI, camera specialist people, whatever you call those people. So definitely a weird one, a wacky one, and one that I'm going to talk about today. So our two main people in this story are Kremers and Lisanne, I believe is how you say her name, Froon, which they're Dutch, so a lot of the words in this case are in fact Dutch, which I can barely pronounce stuff in English. Don't ask me to pronounce stuff in another language. So if I do butcher stuff, I am so very sorry. It is not my intention whatsoever, but I am only just a girl, and I really don't know anything. So, sorry. But Kremers was 21 years of age, and Lisanne Froon was 22. So, pretty young, just starting their adult lives as official, I'd say 21 is when you're, an official adult. But they were both students, and both grew up in, I'm going to butcher this, Amersfoort province of Utrecht in the Netherlands. Kremers was described as a very open and creative person, which a lot of people said that she was incredibly lively and that she really enjoyed the creative side of things, and that she was also an incredibly responsible individual, which adds to this case later on because of how it plays out. But on the opposite side, I'm gonna struggle with her name this whole time, I'm so sorry. Lisanne was more of a optimistic, sort of free-spirited, intelligent person, and she also really loved volleyball. That was one of her main things that she really, really enjoyed, which is cool. I've seen a couple of volleyball games. I think overall they're pretty enjoyable. I don't know. I'm not a big sports person. I like hockey. That's about it. So, yeah. Okay, I just want to apologize for the audio in those last few clips. I didn't realize my fan was on. So sorry if it sounds like I'm in an air tunnel. My bad. So, Kremers had just finished her studies in social and cultural education, specifically specializing in art education, which was right up her alley as a creative person. She also was very excited to travel and see the world and, just sort of put what she had learned in class together, or to practice together with Lisanne, who had a degree in applied psychology and was also extremely excited to go on this once-in-a-lifetime trip to Panama, which is somewhere that, Dutch students probably would not have been before and probably would not have even really thought of going, which is pretty cool. So these two very well-educated ladies packed up and decided to go on a little trip. So Kris and Lisanne actually had recently moved in together and also worked at the same place, which was a restaurant called In Den Kellinghap. I probably just butchered the crap out of that. I'm so sorry to all my Dutch people out there. I actually really love you all very dearly, but the language is simply straight over my head. Sorry about it. But they worked together there, and they both had been saving up their wages for about 6 months to afford to go on this trip, which is pretty impressive if, I do say so myself, which I do, so it's impressive. And both the girls were said to have been really, really excited for this trip, especially because they were paying for it all on their own, which I think just makes things arguably more exciting when you pay for them all on your own, because then it's sort of like you feel accomplished with it. You know what I mean? Like you feel like you really did something, and I think that makes the reward all the better. So they were extremely excited to go on this trip. Both of them had picked Panama because they both wanted to learn Spanish as well as volunteer with local children. This was supposed to be sort of a graduation gift for Lisanne because, of course, she had just graduated. And, of course, she'd want to take her roommate and coworker, Kris, with her because both girls shared similar interest in working with the locals and experiencing the culture, as well as learning Spanish, hopefully. That was the goal of the trip. And both of them really just went for it. So they saved up all their money and started packing, and this wasn't like a spontaneous thing, and they told plenty of people where they were going and what their itinerary was, and they found a host family to stay with, which basically means like they had a family in Panama that was willing to let them live there temporarily while they were on this, I say vacation, it was more so a trip. Like I don't know if I'd call it a vacation, but they had a host family that was willing to let them live there, which is pretty cool. I think staying with a host family would be pretty sick, in my personal opinion. So this trip was really part service trip, part vacation, and the girls headed out. And on April 1st, 2014, the girls decided to go for a hike in the Panama Mountains, which is pretty typical for tourists to want to do things like that. It's an attraction. Is that the right word? Attraction? Yeah, I guess attraction. It's a thing that people like to do when visiting Panama, I should say. So the girls left their host family and decided to bring the family dog with them, which, you know what, me too. I think I also would. Probably. I'd be like, actually, I'm taking your dog. Yeah, thanks. Hope you don't mind. I'm taking him with me. But I took the dog, which, amazing. And they decided to hike around, I'm going to butcher this name. There's forests around, and it's called the Brow, B-A-R-U, Brow Volcano in Boquete, Panama. Once again, I'm butchering these names. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I took 1 year of French and almost failed it. Language is not my thing. Truly, truly and deeply, it is, it's really not. So, they had posted on Facebook that they had planned to sort of explore around Boquete and do a little hiking, and overall we're just going to enjoy their day and sort of take in the natural wonders of Panama. They left around 11 a.m. that day with the dog, and people reported that they had been seen having brunch with 2 Dutchmen. And then after that, it was believed that they embarked on the trail, which was called the El Pinceta Trail, I believe is how you say that. El Pinceta, I believe is how you would say that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't speak Spanish. Once again, took 1 year of French. Wasn't very good at it. But they embarked out on this trail. And before this, they had actually toured the country, did a little, tour thing of it, and had been teaching the local children arts and crafts while they were there, and had really been bonding pretty well with their host family. So all in all considered, they were having a pretty good time in Panama, and they just wanted to go do some sightseeing before they eventually had to go home. So this would be the last time that the girls were confirmed to be seen, was when they were heading out away from these 2 Dutchmen and were heading on to this hike. They did, however, have an appointment scheduled for the next day with a local tour guide, but this would inevitably be missed. So the night of April 1st, the host family's dog returned safe and sound, which, thank goodness, I hate in movies. Listen, if the dog dies in a movie, I'll turn it off. I'm not even kidding. It's that serious. It's that serious. I am a dog lover. I had an American Bulldog. He passed away in March of this year, and it is that serious to me. It is that serious to me. Truly and deeply it is. But anyway, on the night of April 1st, this dog comes home safe and sound. The host family's kind of like, okay, but where are the girls? But ultimately, they didn't report it or anything, assuming that the girls were just out exploring or doing whatever they wanted to, because, they are fully grown adults, and this host family doesn't know them super well, so they assume that maybe they're just out doing, whatever, and that it wasn't necessarily the biggest alarming thing that they should be worried about. They pretty much just assumed that the girls were staying somewhere with someone and didn't report this. The next morning, however, the girls missed an appointment with a local tour guide, and this prompted the host family to alert authorities, because at this point, they did assume that the girls were missing in some capacity because they had missed this appointment that they had scheduled. So it caused some concern, and this led to an investigation, obviously, and once they found out that the girls had last been seen hiking, or said to have, people had last seen them, they were saying they were going hiking, it prompted a search of that forest area, and authorities got on that. They said, we need to find these girls. They're probably in the woods somewhere. They could be hurt. We have to, get into action. So they did. They also did a light search of the village surrounding and everything like that. And then they also did a light search of that forest area the very first day, which, I mean, they work faster than the American police, so I guess that's something. So they conducted a light search, but ultimately nothing immediately was found. By April 6th, the girls were still not found, which caused major concern for pretty much everyone involved. And the families of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon decided to fly out to Panama, decided to fly out to Panama to help aid in the investigation, because obviously their children are missing, and that is a terrible, terrible, awful thing. I can't imagine parents, with children who are missing. That must be, the most terrifying thing ever. So this led to police and dog units and volunteers searching the wooded area for 10 whole days. 10 days straight of searching high and low for these poor girls who are only in their 20s. But ultimately, this really didn't lead to much, and this left the families pretty devastated. Eventually, the parents decided to offer a $38,000 reward, and that is US dollars, for anyone who could come forward with visible information of where the girls could possibly be. And this still didn't lead to finding the girls, which is incredibly disheartening, because, you're willing to give $38,000 and your children, because your children are missing, and your children still aren't found because of it. That's, truly, truly, truly heartbreaking, and my heart goes out to the families, because that's gotta be awful to try and navigate through those kind of emotions. But the police continued to search, even though that the search was winding down. But just as their search efforts were sort of winding down, this led to a local woman coming forward, and she turned in a blue backpack, basically claiming to have found it in a rice paddy along the banks of a river, which is basically like a rice field. If you've never seen one, I'll try to put a picture in right there. But yeah, it's so sad that there was no lead that was brought forth because of the reward, but this blue backpack might be the lead that we need. Now, inside this backpack was $83 in cash, Lisa Ann's passport, a water bottle, and 2 bras. So it seemingly looked like, that's a lot better purple, sorry. It seemingly looked like this was one of the girls' sort of hiking bags that they probably brought along on their hike. And this sort of sparked police interest again, because obviously here's some evidence that the girls did make it to the hike, and that clearly one of them is without a backpack because the police have it. So this sparked new interest, and police searched the wooded area more, trying to find any more sign of the girls, because this was proof that they had made it in the woods. And the families were sort of excited at this because it was a piece of evidence, finally. But what sparked police interest the most was the 2 cell phones and the camera that was inside of this backpack. And this is the biggest piece of evidence in this case, is this gosh dang camera. It is what mind boggles the most people. It is what stumps investigators, and it is the last known moments of the girls pretty much documented. And there's photos on this camera, quite a few photos of various different things, and it left investigators with more questions than it did answers. So they immediately, on finding this camera, they think, okay, let's look at this. And they also look at cell phone records that are also available to them, because now they have both girls' cell phones. So they obviously look through these, find call logs and things like that. And in these call logs, there are also some very interesting information. So these call logs show that roughly around 6 hours into their hike, the phone was used to dial emergency services 112 and 911. And this is obviously alarming, because clearly they were trying to call for somebody, because we don't know if it was the girls. Somebody was trying to dial emergency services with their phone, which is suspicious, obviously. Very suspicious, but it gets weirder. It definitely gets weirder. So further on from this, there was an attempt made by Kris's phone. Sorry, I am trying with names here, guys. Which was an iPhone 4, and it was at 4:39 p.m. So there was an attempt to make the very first distress call. That's what time it was roughly made at, which is kind of alarming because it's only 6 hours into their hike, so it's not like they just started or anything like that. And I don't even believe that they would have been close to the end at that point. But also, I don't know if the girls intended to be out there that long, because from what they had packed, it doesn't really seem like it. So I'm assuming maybe they got slightly lost or something like that. Though the track that they were on can take a while. So maybe they didn't and they just decided to take the whole trail. But from what they packed, it really didn't seem like they were planning on doing that. But that's just pure speculation on my part. After this first attempt by Kris's phone, there was another attempt done by Lisanne's phone around 4:51, but none of these calls got through due to lack of service. So the girls did not reach the authorities with these 2 calls, because unfortunately, out there in the wilderness, there is not a whole lot of service, obviously, and there's not a whole lot of reception. And even if you were to get some reception, you probably don't have enough of it to make a phone call. It's very much like I've been camping, and a lot of the times, like, even if you get enough service, it's not enough to make a phone call. It's barely enough to send a text message, really. So the girls were clearly attempting and failing to get this in order and call for help. Why they're calling for help, I don't know. On April 4th, Lisanne's phone battery actually died, and this happened around 5 p.m., so sort of later in the day. And I'm assuming this is because obviously they were trying to call. I'm assuming they probably made more attempts and things like that just didn't go through at all. And that's why the phone probably died. Or she was using it as a flashlight. That very well could be too. She could have been using it as a flashlight. I didn't think about that. That's probably true. She was probably using it as a flashlight. However, Kris's phone did not die and was intermittently turned on and off probably in search for service, but it did not make any more outgoing calls. So they never tried calling for help again, which I'm assuming is because they couldn't find service and they knew that they weren't going to get anywhere without service. But it was turned on and off quite a few times, probably to conserve the battery and to call, like, to try to find service to call for help is probably what they were doing. However, it was turned on again between April 5th and 11th, but this time it was because someone was entering the incorrect code and not because it was just being turned on and off again. Somebody had tried to enter the wrong PIN, and basically, because like on iPhone, I don't know if you have an iPhone, but if you do, you know that if you try the PIN so many times, it actually locks you out for a certain extent of time. Like if you try it, I think it's like 6 times, you put in the wrong thing or whatever, it locks you out for like 5 minutes, and then if you do it more times, it locks you out for more times. So you sort of have to wait in between so many attempts. So someone did this quite a few times, and this was either because they were in danger or because someone else had taken the phone and was trying to enter it without knowing the correct passcode. Either way, pretty terrifying, and I don't like it. On April 11th, Kris's phone was turned on roughly around 10:51 a.m. and was turned off for the last time at 11:56 a.m. On April 8th, 90 flash photos were taken between roughly like late at night. I would say probably from 10 to 11 would be my best guess. Maybe even closer to 11 to midnight, but they were all in the dark of night, if you will. A few of the photos show that they were possibly near a river or ravine, and a lot of them are quite blurry and you can't quite make out what they are. Some show a twig with a plastic bag on top of a rock. Another shows what looks like a backpack strap. Another shows the back of Kris's head. So you can see her hair because she had very distinct red hair. And I'll put the pictures up on screen. She had very distinctive red hair that was beautiful. Absolutely. I'm jealous of it, truly. But you could definitely tell that that was the back of her head. So that's terrifying. Oh, and I also think I forgot to say is that the 2 calls that I talked about were the only ones that actually got through to like being made. The other ones, there was 77 attempts at calling the police, but the other ones never actually got, like they never actually made calls because there was very little service. The 2 that I talked about, the calls were made, but never fully picked up or anything because the service was so terrible. But this really doesn't even, the call logs were weird and the call logs were terrifying, but it was nothing compared to what they were about to find in these photos. So let's break down these photos. I took a lot of notes on them, so let's break down these photos roughly one by one, starting with the first one that was taken on the morning of April 1st when the woman had left for their hike. So this one's pretty freaking normal. It's Kris, Kremers, and Lisanne Froon on the trail near the Continental Divide, and nothing led police to be suspicious about this photo. There's no one in the back. There's no one. Sorry, something just fell in my room and it scared me. There's nothing in the back. There's nobody, nothing to really sound the alarms about, which is good, so we're starting off strong. After this, however, the photos went downhill, being the ones that I named earlier. There were pictures taken erratically almost, it seemed. It seems as if the camera was moving. There was a lot of them that was blurry. There was a lot of them that were of seemingly nothing. And there was one that was missing. And this was very, very strange, because why would there be one, just one, that was missing? Why wouldn't it be more than one? Why wouldn't they all be deleted? Why would only this one be deleted? So obviously police investigate this, and they try to recover the photo, but are unable to do so. So they send this camera in to basically be analyzed and tampered with to try and get this photo back, but ultimately they would be unsuccessful. So the discovery of this backpack led to searches of the, and I'm gonna butcher this name, Kulber River. Around this river, shorts were found belonging to Kris. They were her denim shorts, and they were found atop a rock. And they were pretty neatly folded, you know? They weren't in any sort of disarray, which was very interesting to investigators, because why would you take your shorts off and fold them? But whatever. This was only a few kilometers away from where the original backpack had been discovered by that woman. And 2 months later, closer to where the backpack was discovered, a pelvis, trigger warning, descriptions of crime scenes and bones and things, so viewer discretion is advised. They found a pelvis. A whole pelvis, and a boot with a foot still inside. Girl, what? Hello? A whole foot in my in a pelvis? Ay. Soon they found at least 33 wildly scattered bones all around the site. And the DNA testing confirmed that these were Kremers and Froon's, and it was only around 10% of Froon's, which is kind of interesting, and the other 5% of it was Kremers. So 10% was Froon's, 5% was Kremers, which, weird, but whatever. Another thing that was really weird about these bones is that they were completely bleached, which can happen when bones sit out for long periods of time, but is kind of unlikely for the way that these bones were found to be that bleached. So another thing that was noted by a Panama forensic anthropologist was that the bones had no marks on them. So not cultural or natural, 0 marks at all. Like not a single mark on them whatsoever, which was weird, and also probably ruled out the likelihood of scavengers or animal attack. Because if that were the truth, then there would be marks on the bones, and there simply was not. So this led to far more questions than it did answers. Not only this, but it also led investigators to thinking, well, maybe it was foul play. Obviously, that's your second best option. Well, forensic pathologist Frank van der Goot, what a name, what a name, said that he basically thought foul play was implausible. He thought, no, wasn't foul play. He said that it was most likely that the girls got disoriented while on the hike and got lost and died of the elements, especially because they were a lot of cliffs in the area, and they weren't really super experienced hikers. And he just believed that, they probably fell, got hurt, and succumbed to the elements. And that's what happened to them. But that wouldn't explain why all their belongings were laid out neatly while their clothes were folded, and why there was 0 marks on their bones, as well as them being bleached. It was very, very suspicious. The whole thing's real suspicious. Some locals, when asked about this case, have said, though, that a human encounter isn't implausible at all. In fact, they're pretty common near the area around the first stream that the girls were at. It's very common to meet people coming from the Caribbean side, and it is also very plausible to meet people who are also hiking in that area. And it's also not completely impossible that the girls had stumbled upon someone who took advantage of them, or possibly took them in general, and possibly took their lives. But the police, they kept the case open. They didn't give what it was, basically. They didn't come out and say anything. Her family had flown back and come back. Their families had flown, came back, all sorts of things to be in this investigation. And there was a lot of theories that arose from this, so we're going to go through a couple of those right now. So one theory is obviously that the girls simply got lost and fell and hurt themselves and then died. That's one that's one theory, that's one thought, that's one explanation for what happened here. Is it plausible? Yeah, I suppose it is plausible. There's always a chance of that happening when you are in the woods alone. It is always a possibility. Another possibility, though, is that they were taken by animals, attacked by animals, and that's what did them in. But given the evidence, I don't know if I really believe this theory, just because the lack of the lack of blood, or the lack of just a struggle. Seemingly, I know that there was only bones left, but there was no seeming of a struggle or of anything of that sort. So I don't know if I necessarily believe that it was animals in this case, and it just seems unlikely. Another possibility is that they did in fact run into somebody, which I think is personally a little bit more plausible because of the way their stuff was found. I think that's my biggest indicator that maybe something or someone got them, and I'm leaning towards someone because that just seems to be more plausible than an animal, because an animal doesn't fold clothes. You know what I mean? I've never seen a mountain lion fold some denim shorts, okay? Personally, I haven't seen it. If you've seen it, let me know, but I haven't personally seen it. Another thing that I think points me to the human theory is that missing photo. And I say this because I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, and I believe that maybe that photo was of something or someone that didn't want to be on camera. And I'm going with the it's someone theory, because in my personal opinion, that's my personal opinion. Another thing too is I've seen in a lot of sources is that because investigators really got stuck up on these photographs that they took, which I understand because that's their last moments, and how bizarre and sort of random they were. I'm thinking they were using it as a flashlight. And I'm thinking this way because obviously Lisanne's phone was dead, and they needed Kris's to dial 911, so they were preserving the battery. Well, without this, I'm assuming they didn't have a light, so because they weren't planning to be out there overnight. They were planning to just be out there for a couple of hours, They weren't planning to be out here when it was dark, so they didn't have a flashlight, so I'm assuming they were using the flash of the camera as a light to sort of guide their way, because otherwise they were hiking in pitch black. And that's really hard to do when you're somewhere that is unfamiliar and has rough terrain. And also, that adds to my theory that they captured someone who didn't want to be on camera, because if you're flashing around, right, like you're using it as a light, you're gonna flash it towards noises and things, because if there's an animal you want to know. Well, maybe they clicked and caught somebody who didn't want to be on camera. And that's my theory with that missing photo, because why would you delete just one? And why would you delete it to the point that it was unrecoverable? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm thinking maybe it was a third party. As well as the getting into the phone part, that too. If you, like, I know my own phone password, and the maximum I think I'll enter it in wrong is like 3 times. And it takes like, I think at least 6 for your phone to lock you out and say like it's a wrong attempt. So I'm assuming that this was somebody who didn't know the password and was possibly trying to like see if they had any information, or if they had called the cops maybe. I don't know exactly why. That's a plot hole in my theory. I don't know exactly why the person would want to get into the phone, but I'm assuming that's what it was. It was someone else. Or maybe they thought there was more pictures on there of them and wanted to get rid of it, although there wasn't any found, but maybe that's what the person thought. I don't know. I'm gonna go do lips and lashes, and I'll be right back to give you my final thoughts on this case. So I think my final thoughts on this case is that it is one that keeps me up at night, because where did they go? It's unsolved. We don't know what happened to the girls. We just know that unfortunately they are deceased, and that something happened to them out on those trails. And it was either, it could be anything, honestly. I was going to say it's either a person or an animal or an act of nature, but it could literally be anything. Could literally be anything. And that's, I don't know, because there's so much evidence and so little evidence in the same. And it's like their very last moments are documented, yet we can't prove anything. It's like we literally see the photos of their last moments, yet we can't put the puzzle pieces together. And that stresses me out. It lays heavy on my noggin. Like, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Like, what theory you guys believe in the comments below, because I'd be really interested to see. But yeah, I think my final thoughts are that it's tragic and it's awful and it keeps me up at night. And I will hand it back over to Outro Me. And that is all I have for you in today's case. I hope you enjoyed it as much as you can enjoy a true crime video. Once again, leave me any comments, concerns, questions, or recommendations in the comments down below. I love to hear from you guys and love to start discussions. That's why I just started this channel, to advocate and bring light to issues and cases that deserve it, and to build a community. Once again, if this was heavy for you, go hug a family member, hug your dog, go outside, touch some grass, watch some cartoons, do something that makes you happy, because at the end of the day, you come first. And always like and subscribe, because that really helps me out. I'm at 100 subscribers, and I am so very grateful for all of you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope that you have a good day. Remember, be safe, be kind, and be yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Love ya.